Hey guys, I want to welcome you to the weekly Wednesday for the Financial Freedom newsletter, where every week, every Wednesday, we delve into something inspirational, motivational, something excerpt taken from the Financial Freedom weekly newsletter. Wherever you are, if you're listening on Spotify, on iTunes, Google, be sure to click the like, subscribe, share, comment. And without ado, let's get into the show. Hey guys, I want to welcome you to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's guest, Whitney Kroneberger, and she's a life coach, but she specialized in Christian female entrepreneurs, and I'm really interested in kind of this niche down. She's also a podcast host of the Original Female Entrepreneur, but today's going to be talking all about reclaiming your identity, thoughts, purpose. It's going to be really interesting. I'm always interested in hearing about, different spiritual backgrounds and how we can achieve freedom. So Whitney, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's good to be on.
Yeah. I really like how you niche down and kind of tell people your background and, what you do and why you do it. And we'll get into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, so when I graduated from college, I went to work for a nonprofit and I was there for about 10 years. I helped them in their talent acquisition department. So I helped their executives and managers and directors hire their staff and put together teams. And so I really kind of fell in love with, how people engage with one another and how to build effective teams. And so I did that for 10 years. I left to start my own business, and then I became a coach. And so what I have built now is kind of a culmination of a lot of years of diving into women that are highly ambitious, that have made a lot of money. And so I have spent a lot of time coaching that type of person. But I do feel like now in my career, I'm starting to recognize some of the similar issues that a lot of men and women experience as they get to levels of wealth or success, and they start having imposter syndrome, or they start wondering, has it all been worth it? Is this, I've done all the things that I wanted to do. Now what? And so I've kind of taken all that information, and now I do one-on-one coaching. I have a group program, but really I have a heart for women who are lonely, who feel like they are isolated, who feel like they are in some massive shame cycles. And my goal is to just kind of keep them in the game, keep them healthy where they can make good decisions and still find creativity and stay doing the things that they were meant to do. So that's kind of the type of person that I'm working with today.
Yeah, really interesting. And kind of talking about, so I love this idea is where you have a purpose versus assignment, and why it's important to know the difference.
Yeah, this is something that I struggled with for a long time. I think that as a life coach, obviously we are really interested in kind of this, people's personality types and, Enneagram and strengths finders and all of these things. And what I quickly recognized is I really believe that there is a difference in the way that we were created and designed. And my belief is that God has designed every single person individually with a specific set of gifts and skills and abilities. So there's this purpose. This is like what we were designed for. But then there's also our assignment, and your assignment can kind of change throughout the year. So it could look like, okay, well, I was in this job for 10 years and I was hiring for 10 years, and that was my assignment at that point. And then I felt like I was called out of that and to start my own business. And so my assignment now in this season correlates with working with Christian female entrepreneurs. And so while who we are at the core, I don't believe ever changes. Like, we were created to do these things. What we are called to changes within every season or over multiple seasons. And I think there's the reason that it's important to find the distinction is because as high achieving entrepreneurs, it's easy to find our identity in what we do rather than who we are, or in my case, like, being a Christian, being a believer, my identity comes from who is my creator and how has he created me to show up in this world. And so when we find our identity in what we do, if that gets taken away, then we kind of crumble, right? If we are called to ministry, if we're called to law or to medicine, and our whole identity is wrapped up into that, if something threatens that, or if we are taken out of the game somehow or not able to perform at that level, then that's when a lot of people go into this deep depression, or what am I supposed to be doing? And so I find that if we can really uncover our identity at its core, the things that actually matter, then when those other things are threatened, we don't fall apart. We don't go into the shame cycle.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's quite interesting because when I when I went full in as an entrepreneur, and what's interesting is I kind of intuition or whatever is like, oh, I have different assignments for you, either mentor or start podcasts or speak or write books. It's kind of interesting because it's like you're the these hints, this is your next assignment, which is quite interesting.
I think it kind of takes out some of the pressure to really feel like I need to do these things to be fulfilled. It's like, I think that it gives me more peace when I think about, there's not a right path, or it's not black and white necessarily. It's whatever path I'm choosing right now is okay. And I know the Lord is going to bless that. And I know I can be successful in that. And if I'm called to do a different thing, then I can do that. But it's not the pressure of, well, if I go and choose this path, then I'm doing something wrong and I'm going to be cursed for the rest of my life or whatever. It's no, we just make decisions. And based on those decisions, we either handle the consequences or we choose a different assignment. But I don't ever think of it as, now I'm stuck in this and I can't get out of it, or now I have to do this one thing because this is all I've ever done. Like, it just gives us a lot of freedom, I think, to choose.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was talking to another entrepreneur, and she said the same, like, because a lot of doctors, they feel trapped because, these high incomes, but, these golden handcuffs, but they can't leave because it's really hard to leave.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, you're not trapped. You have choices. If you leave, there's you have freedom of choice. It's just, every choice has, consequences. And, a lot of doctors just feel, oh, I can't, I'm stuck, I'm trapped, but,
I can definitely see that.
Yeah. What's really interesting is talking about, the first thing is, what is soul rest? I've never heard of this. And, curating soul rest, what is it? Why is it a necessity?
I feel like self-care is kind of this buzzword, and it has been around for a while. And I feel like a lot of people just associate that with taking a bubble bath or going on vacation or something, which is great. I think all of those things are good. And especially as it comes to people in medicine, I think that it's hard to think about, like, well, I'm in this line of work and I rest when I'm not working. But I think that I read a book by John Mark Comer called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And it was eye-opening to me because what he talks about in that book is the difference between rest and soul rest. And a lot of us believe, okay, well, I work this highly intensive job, and I putting a lot of hours in, and it's high stress, and I'm working with people every single day. And so rest comes when I leave work and I go and I'm sleeping. And I think that when I think about rest specifically, I think about how am I recovering so that I'm going back into my role at full force. And I think that comes when we truly find soul rest. And what I would say soul rest is being able to it's not a physical thing. It's very much a mental thing. It's allowing our brains and our bodies to really catch up with our brains. And so I think that it requires us to slow down to the point where we can tap back into the creativity and the inspiration that's within us. That I believe comes from the Lord. But I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is, I can't leave this path. I can't do this because I don't know what's next, or it's unknown. I think the value of finding rest for your soul means that you are setting aside time and you are intentionally giving yourself a break from things so that you can really have time to uncover, what would it look like if I stepped away from medicine? What would it look like if I stepped away from my 9 to 5? And that doesn't often happen when we are burned out or we are moving from thing to thing to thing. It doesn't allow us to have margin to really come back to what is actually possible. So when I think about soul rest, some of the things that I think about are the things that actually fill my cup. And that, so I'm an Enneagram 7, but I have a whole like self-care menu, soul care menu for different Enneagram types. But it could be going for a walk. It could be things that are just, it could be something like a bubble bath or something like going to a movie or having dinner with your spouse or whatever. But the key to it is to create those pockets of time, not wait for those pockets of time to come. So what that looks like is during the week, I'm setting aside specific hours or a 30-minute block or margin during my week so that I know I've got something to look forward to where I can kind of pull back and recenter and align. It could look like every couple of months doing a 24-hour overnight by myself so that I'm coming back to where's my inspiration coming from? It's coming from the Lord. So what does that look like? I'm getting 24 hours away so I can reconnect and ask the Lord, am I still on the right path? What are your plans for me right now? And then it also is planning out a year in advance and planning out vacations so that we've always got things on the books that we know, okay, I'm looking forward to that time of rest and reprieve. And I think that is when our souls can kind of slow down and open back up to what's possible and not just this moving from thing to thing.
I love that. And I really, being intentional, just kind of very, I like how you mentioned or described, you create time. You basically set aside time, this is time for X, Y, and Z and non-negotiable. And this is, kind of like sharpening your sword. Which brings me to my next question is, in these area of uncertainty, how do you help individuals get confidence in their decision making?
Yeah. Well, I think that, again, that comes back to having a deep faith in God. But I think that when we make decisions from our own strength or our own ability, it often comes out of a place of scarcity, or it comes out of a place of stress or overwhelm. And when we do that, we don't give ourselves a lot of that margin to really go in and make that decision confidently, because we're just doing it without thinking. And we're kind of just doing it as we're kind of taking a back seat, or it's not as deliberate. And so when I think about decisions that I've made or the decisions that I help my clients make, usually it is laying out all the possibilities and then trying to figure out, okay, what out of these possibilities bring me life? What things are stressing me out? And I think ultimately the confidence comes from a place that I'm not going to actually screw this up, right? Like what I was just kind of talking about, that it's not a right or a wrong or a black or a white. Like I do think that there are decisions that we can make that are better than others, but ultimately, no matter what decision I make, the Lord is always going to be with me. And so that means that the confidence doesn't have to come in my own ability. It doesn't have to come because I'm great and I have all these amazing ideas. It comes from this external source that knows all things and knows me unconditionally and knows my life and knows what's best for me. And so if I am constantly plugging in to that source, and in my case, God, if I'm constantly in prayer and constantly reading the Bible and I'm in conversation and in communion with Him, then what that means is I'm not worrying about screwing this up, because I know no matter what I do, He's with me. And so for non-believers or for people who don't believe in God, I think it could look different. It could look like finding inspiration and signs and and in other people and getting feedback from other people and that sort of thing. But I think that our society today really takes so much ownership and responsibility for ourselves. And sometimes we think it's all up to us, and we forget to go ask for help or go check in with other people. And we feel like it maybe makes us look weak. But I do think that asking people that we respect and admire, that have our best interests at heart, it kind of takes a little bit of that pressure off. And I think that there's such beauty in collaboration and working together in your community and not just isolating, because entrepreneurship or being in a high level role in medicine, it can be really lonely to think that you are the only person struggling with these things, or you're the only person having these thoughts. And when we're in community together, those decisions are not just made on our own. They're made with a group of people, or plugging into a higher power or God.
Yeah, interesting. The other question is, so we talked about soul rest, but one thing is you talked about boundaries of the mind, which is, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I'd love for you to describe it, or what it looks like or what it feels like.
Well, when I first became a coach, I quickly, especially as a life coach, I mean, it's kind of a funny role. Most people don't know what it is. It sounds kind of like a joke. And so I very quickly recognized that there were these kind of tics that every life coach has. And they're always talking about self-care and boundaries and, all these things. And so I did that. I jumped into it and I started talking about boundaries. And at first, when I was talking about boundaries, it very much was how to have boundaries with your mother-in-law or with your spouse or with friends and those kinds of things. And it really came to a point of like conflict resolution and how to enter into conflict in a healthy way, which I love. I love that conversation too. But what I was recognizing with specifically high achieving entrepreneurs is that what happens is that we work all day long and we're sitting at our computer, we're doing Zooms, or I'm coaching, or you're with patients, or whatever this looks like. And then your day is up. So maybe I'm working 9 to 2, or maybe I'm doing a 24-hour shift or whatever it is. And so you're off the clock, right? You leave your work, or you shut your computer, or you clock out, or whatever it is. And you go home, and what happens? Your brain is still thinking about your patient, or your brain is still thinking about your client, or you're not able to actually mentally clock out. You can't turn your brain off. And so when especially as entrepreneurs, if we don't work, we don't eat, right? So we're constantly on. And what I'm finding is that as an entrepreneur, when you go on vacation, you're still working in your mind. You may have left your computer in the hotel, but you're still thinking about your work all the time. And that keeps us from being fully present with our families and with people that mean a lot to us. Mm-hmm. It keeps us from engaging in the activity and being present. It keeps us from tapping into creativity and inspiration. And so what I teach my clients to do is to really be careful and cautious about what they are allowing in to their brain and what they're allowing to stay in their brain when they're off the clock. So boundaries of the mind and the way that I define it is, how are you guarding your thoughts so that you can be fully present? So you are not allowing the day's thoughts or all of your work thoughts to continue to roll around in your mind, that you are filtering through those. You're being intentional with the thoughts that you're allowing to stay in there. You are removing the thoughts that aren't serving you well. You're processing through the thoughts that are causing you anxiety, because that, for a lot of people, when their head hits the pillow, they've still got an hour's worth of work to do in their brain. And I would love for them to hit the pillow and be able to fall asleep really quickly, because they've already wrestled with those and they have good boundaries to kind of filter through what those are. So boundaries of the mind is really just being able to be intentional with what thoughts come in. And here's the kicker. I think most people have the belief that they wouldn't see themselves as necessarily a victim to their thoughts, but they don't actually realize that they have the power to choose thoughts, or to not choose thoughts, or to not allow thoughts to come into their mind. They just are like, well, whatever comes in, I've got to deal with. And whatever you say, I've got to deal with. And whatever he does, I have to deal with. And we lose the ability to calm and quiet our minds. And so boundaries, I think, give us the ability to find peace and to find clarity and to find calm. And that is what leads to soul rest. And that allows us to continue to be sustainable in the role that we're in. And it allows us to continue to do what we're doing at our highest level and not burn out. And I think that's it's prevalent. There are so many people who get into these positions and they're like, oh, it's a 5-10 year runway. And then mentally I can't handle it anymore,
It's what's interesting is I've been really really intentional about cultivating the certain energies around me, and like if it's like somebody's like attracting drama or just kind of like just kind of lower, like dragging you down, you can actually, and then you intentionally curate like who your influence is.
Yes, I would totally agree with that. It is. We often just think whoever is in our life is in our life, and I'm not a proponent of just like getting rid of everybody, but I do think that, I don't know who originally said this, but I know Brené Brown talks a lot about the 5 people that you surround yourself with, your sticky note people, right? That they are the person that you eventually become is the 5 people that you surround yourself with. And I think what you're saying is really true, that if you are around a lot of people who complain all the time, or who are very negative, or who talk poorly about their spouse or their partner, or who complain often, those types of people, you will become like that. And so it is so important to make sure that the person that you want to become, you have that type of person in your sphere, in your close sphere, so that you are confiding in them and asking for feedback, giving them permission to give you feedback. But that doesn't just happen because we, go find some friends or the friends from high school that we had, or it really does take intentionality on our part to take inventory of those people and what types of characteristics they have that we may like or not like, and then how do we handle that at that point?
And I love that. And I love just kind of curating your thoughts. Next question, kind of as I know, you have a lot of interesting ideas, and the other is what is the shame cycle, and how does it keep people from completing their assignment or getting them off their purpose? And and tell people how they can find you and follow you, etc.
Yeah. So I kind of figured out this shame cycle because I was seeing my clients. What would happen is they would experience success of some kind, and then some sort of trial or challenge would come along, and their thoughts immediately went to, I shouldn't be struggling with this. I've already struggled with this in the past and I've moved past it. I make too much money to struggle with this. This shouldn't be an issue for me. And they feel shame because they feel like they should either be past it, or it shouldn't be something that they even wrestle with anymore. It's a number of things, but I think that once we get into those thoughts that are not, I call them unproductive thoughts. You've got productive and unproductive, or unproductive and productive emotions. When you start getting into the cycles of unproductive thoughts, then that shame kind of pulls us into hiding. And then we get into a piece of this that's kind of this self-sufficiency. I just need to get myself out of it. I just need to pull myself out. And sometimes it works where we can kind of pull ourselves back out. But then once we find that challenge again, we go back into that shame cycle. We go back into those guilty thoughts, or I shouldn't be struggling with this. I should be further along. And so what I have found is that once we find ourselves in that shame cycle and we have those unproductive thoughts, one of the ways to move out of that, to kind of pivot out of that cycle and into a non-shame cycle or a productive cycle, or some people call it high value, but is when you get to that part where you feel like you have to do it on your own, that self-sufficiency, that's when it's really beneficial to go and make sure that you've got a coach, or you've got people that are going to tell you the truth, or that you are in communion with God, or you're praying, or whatever it is, so that you've got other people to speak into that process and not allow you to stay in that negative thought cycle. Because I do think that often when the shame cycle continues to happen when we believe it's our job to fix all of our problems, and it's not, and that we can't go ask for help. Like I think that it is easy to believe I need to have this, I need to do this on my own, I need to have it all together, I've got to fix it myself, or what would they think if they knew this, or I would lose my credibility if somebody knew this about me, or no one would trust me, or no one would respect me if they knew this. And when we get into those thoughts and we don't have a safe person to go and confide in, then that cycle continues. So the goal is to have somebody or something a process that you have to remind yourself of truth and who you are and your identity so that you can pivot out of that. So that's the shame cycle. And it's been really helpful. As far as getting in touch with me, I'm on Instagram at Whitney Kroneberger. I also have a website, whitneykroneberger.com. And right now I have this group coaching program called the Mastermind for 6 and 7 figure earning Christian female entrepreneurs. And it's just a really cool container to have these high level, high achieving women to kind of come into this container for accountability and for goal setting, and to help them grow in their business, help them grow their cash flow, and also to help them find that soul rest and uncover their identity and create those boundaries. And so that kicks off in February. So I've got registration open for that.
Awesome. And with that, let's thank Whitney for coming on. Really interesting. And all of her resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks so much.
I hope you really enjoyed that wonderful, inspirational, motivational piece. Again, wherever you are listening, if you liked it, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're on everywhere: Spotify, iTunes, Google, Amazon, Audible. And without much ado, be sure to thank this show's sponsors, and we'll see you next time.